argued, fought about, but, I don't think that that's a bad thing, that people are arguing and fighting. It's just I don't like the way in which they do it sometimes.
Well, I want to say that I would be remiss to not mention that I got many, we tweeted your appearance, and I got many tweets back. Is that how you say it? People tweeted back. And so, I know that definitions are important, and they felt that definition, at least this is what I glean from the tweets back that I got. I gleaned from the tweets back that the definition doesn't include people who are transgender. That's the, I don't know if I'm stating it accurately, but can you address that issue?
Yeah, that would just simply be wrong, if folks think that. The definition as it stands now, is completely broad and completely subjective, and so includes anyone who asserts, a gender identity, regardless of their biology. So it certainly does include transgender people. And there's many memes that are floating around on the internet that, it's like the gender umbrella and who's under the trans umbrella. The way this legislation is drafted, it's everybody. Like, everybody can assert this. And, from a legal perspective, as a lawyer, my question is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Now, I think the problem that we're trying to solve is to prohibit discrimination against gender nonconforming people, which includes transgender people, which includes transsexuals. And there's a few ways to do that. One is you can continue to push this broad definition that captures people that maybe you're not concerned about. So, for example, maybe you're not concerned about Pete, who dresses up as a woman to go to the bar on a Saturday night. Maybe you don't care about Pete. I don't know. Maybe you do. But those are the kinds of questions in looking at that definition you want to think about. The other piece, which I think it's a gross injustice.
But that's not a transgender person who lives as the other, all
right.
The time as a...
Right. I totally agree with that. But if you look at the definition that the gay rights groups push, it says nothing about duration or, how you live your life. It simply says gender identity means a gender-related identity regardless of your sex at birth. So it doesn't have the questions you're asking are precisely the types of questions that activists should ask, because
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we do need definition, and we need a great big discussion, and but we have to have in mind the goal of building a coalition. But I think that's been given up on.
I think that's right, and I think it's also unfortunate because there are strong legal theories for transgender people to assert now based on sex discrimination. And there are trans lawyers who are pushing these types of cases. If you're familiar with the EEOC decision in the Mia Macy case, where they took a discrimination complaint for sex stereotyping. You had the Vandy Beth Glenn case down in Georgia. They took it under a theory of sex stereotyping. Title VII at the federal level, has a rich body of law that talks about sex stereotyping that transgender folks can take advantage of now. And there are analogs at the state level in, many states. And it blows my mind.
It blows mine too. It's like, they are not doing the work of coalescing. It's like so mind control, COINTELPRO. That's what we called it in the 60s, Kathleen. I don't know if you know about COINTELPRO, but what that means is, people were hired to infiltrate lefty groups and screw them up, basically. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes I wonder about that, because why are they not getting all of these ideas together and coalescing it for true power, for like real power? I don't know why. They just prefer, I don't know, maybe it's because there's no minds involved yet that understand.
No, I mean, it's just human nature. Everyone has a different point of view. Everyone has a different point of view. You know, and you have people at the head or who are leading. You know, everything is hierarchical. You have people who are at the head dictating to other people. That becomes a problem.
That's right.
So, I mean, that becomes a problem. Not everyone can speak for others. So everyone needs a voice. Everyone needs to be heard. So what I want to ask Kathy is, please define for me, because feminism for me doesn't apply to black women. However, there are black women who will argue with me and say, oh, no, black women are feminists. I disagree with that. I'm thinking, how can you possibly be? Black women have always worked. But that, you know, I'm open to the discussion. So, Kathy, define for me, what is radical feminism?
Well, let me just say this, because I think this is important to get out of the way. I'm a peasant. My background is, I come from a working class background. I went to the college I went to because my mom used to walk me around the campus when I was a little girl there and we were living in the Bronx. Neither one of my parents went to college. So I am not a women's studies major. I did not study feminism. I didn't pay attention to most of this stuff. I did read gynecology when I was in college because the woman that I was seeing had to read it for her class, so I wanted to be able to talk to her about it. But, you know, I just want to just say that because I know there are many people in the radical feminist community who have a huge problem with me, like, talking like I am, like, the head of radical feminists, because that's laughable. I'm the most ignorant person to talk about theory and nuance and all that stuff. So that being said, I will say this about radical feminism and gender. Essentially, you know, the root of oppression is you were born female into this society. So this is true of black women, this is true of white women, this is true of poor women, disabled women, Asian women. All of us as women are born into this society as subordinate to men. That system that makes women subordinate to men is gender. So gender, you know, instead of what trans people often say, you know, gender is personal to me, it's internal, it's the strong feeling, I just feel really strongly. In the radical feminist perspective, gender is this insidious system that is that is invisible and so part of our everyday lives that we can barely see it. And radical feminism gives you the tool to dig through all of this stuff. So once I started reading, and there are many radical feminist blogs, one of the best ones is Feminade by a woman named Fact Check Me, which I would encourage people to look at, but there are many other ones. Once you start digging through, it's really hard not to see how messed up and how hard women as a class have it. That being said, there are obviously, you know, intersections where other women have it harder than other women. So, for example, racism will impact the way that gender impacts black women. Classism will impact the way that gender impacts women who are poor. So those are things that radical feminists pay attention to, are concerned about, and ultimately we want to talk with women about how we can overcome our shared oppression as women. So that's my understanding and my framework. And, you know, others, you know, and you might consider having people smarter than me on your show to talk about that, but that's where I come from.
Yeah, we understand. We understand your perspective. Of course, you know, some of what you say I agree with, and some of what you say I don't agree with. But Kathleen, for me to answer what you asked, I think that really the way I think about things, although I see a specific set of rules for women that differs from a specific set of rules for men, and none of them are, you know, most of them are not positive or to women's benefit, but you know, some are. But, you know, the way I see the world is just, you know, the rich and the poor. That's basically it to me. And in those two subgroups is, sexism, racism, and all the other isms, because really the biggest divide, it's to me, it isn't male or female. It's rich and poor. Mm-hmm. So there we have some difference and some agreement there. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But Kathleen, I understand what you're saying about feminism not working for women of color, and I understand what you're saying and somewhat agree. But without class analysis of any radical or revolutionary movement, it's just a BS movement, in my opinion. And that's why a lot of this movement bothers me, because there is absolutely no class analysis whatsoever to it, or it's missing and lacking. And it seems to be just another academic, and of course I believe that academia serves the rich and works to keep the poor down. So it's like a lot of intersections for me when academics decide for everybody who's involved in revolutionary movements. First of all, if you were a revolutionary, in my mind, you wouldn't be at any university. Seriously, you wouldn't. You would be on the streets doing something else. So it's like when I ran for president, it's like I realized that people on the left, they don't want to have a revolution if they're not getting paid for making it.
Hello?
And that's just part of being in America and the mind control that exists here. We can't fight our way out of a goddamn paper bag. Excuse me, I know I'm going to get in trouble for swearing.
Yeah, you just told Kathy she couldn't swear, and then you swore. Roseanne.
I know, but she's Roseanne.
I'll get in trouble. He'll come on and warn me in a minute. But we can't seem to fight, organize, coalesce, join, understand, speak, communicate our way out of a damn paper bag. And I'm tired of it. And, I just think there's people, there are people who are like for progress and human rights, and you've got to go all the way with it.
You got to go all the way.
All the way.
And you got to include all voices. But I mean, I'm attracted to what Kathy is saying from a legal perspective, because I'm trained legally, and so you speak my language. I understand you about definitions and all this stuff, and including everyone. But also, I have to say that I'm also aware that not all voices are heard, and I think that's important. When I got these responses to, tweeting you, it bothered me that, I think of hierarchy. It bothered me. I thought, don't tell me lesbians are like dissing transgender people. I don't want to hear that. Is that what's happening? That's the impression, that's the feel that I got from it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that is a really good observation that brings up, you have the legal issue and working out the legislation, but you also have a cultural issue where you have this broad GLBT